Hello everybody, it's Allain here, your favourite herpetologist, and today I have yet another set from Toymany. You may be able to see a trend emerging here, and this set is quite different to the ones that I have reviewed before. We're not focusing purely on a single type of animals, such as reptiles, amphibians or turtles, but instead a particular geographical region. And today, this set includes animals come from Madagascar. Because of that, not all of these are reptiles or amphibians, and we have quite a few mammals as well. I should say that the set here, all of the species we're going to see are endemic to Madagascar. That means they're found nowhere else in the world. Funnily enough, I picked up a tenric trying to tidy up the mess that I made when I emptied the box, so we'll start with him. So, if you're not familiar with them, tenrics sometimes superficially resemble hedgehogs, although they aren't closely related. You can see they've got this shrew-like mouth, nostril, snout, that's what I'm looking for. They have sharp claws, and they typically live in the forests of Madagascar, although there aren't many of those left, unfortunately. And this particular species, given the coloration, looks to me to be a lowland streaked tenric, which I haven't seen before in real life, but I think maybe one day I'll get the chance to see one of these guys scampering around looking for insects and invertebrates in the undergrowth. I'm going to pick this guy up next, which hopefully some of you recognize as the tomato frog. These guys get the name because they are bright red and look like a tomato. I know scientists are inventive when it comes to naming species. They're typically a lot larger than this. They are a very rotund and wide frog, and when I've seen them in zoos and other collections, they've always surprised me with how large they can get. However, there's a lot of fine detail here. See some warts on the skin that have been highlighted with a certain color. We've got, a great pair of eyes there. This little flash of dark down the flanks, which I have in nature, and then a lighter belly, and they'll sit in the undergrowth, kind of like an African bullfrog or a horned toad, and wait for food to come to them. So that is a tomato frog. Next, we have one of the chameleons in this set, and this is one of the micro leaf chameleons. This is Brachypsia micro, and this was discovered in 2012. I'm sure you've seen the images of this species sitting on the end of a matchstick. That is this guy, and is only a few centimeters in length from the tip of the snout to the tip of the tail. Come back. Already making an escape. And the detail here is phenomenal, given the fact that this is probably a few times larger than life size. You've got every single bit of detail there, the reduced feet, the reduced tail, the reduced eye turrets, all these little spots. This is a great little chameleon model, and one that I can't wait to join the rest of his buddies in my collection. Another species which is quite striking from Madagascar is this, which is the satanic leaf-tailed gecko. There are a few species of leaf-tailed geckos in Madagascar. Some of you may have them as pets or have seen them in zoos. This is probably the most striking one. You can see why it gets its name because of this red flash behind the eyes, and it's sort of like eye horns. Its tail does resemble a leaf in nature, which helps it to blend in. But these guys will, stick to the side of trees and use their camouflage and these harsh lines to try to break up their outline and just blend in and wait for nighttime to come when out and about hunting. It's during the daytime that they're trying to hide to avoid those visual predators such as the mammals and the birds. But this is a very good model, and I know a few people that keep leaf-tailed geckos that will want to get their hands on one of these. So well done to Toymany there. Hopefully this species needs no introduction. This is the ring-tailed lemur, and I'm hoping that many of you are familiar with these from local zoos or from television, or if you're a little bit older like myself, then perhaps maybe the Madagascar animated film and TV series, whereby King Julian, voiced by Sacha Baron Cohen, aka Ali G, was a ring-tailed lemur. These guys are extremely social. They live in family groups, and most zoos these days have a family of them. Everywhere I've been recently has had ring-tailed lemurs, so fingers crossed you're very familiar with these. This is a fantastic model. Again, a nice dynamic pose, which is great to see. So the animal's just sitting at rest. Easier for some animals to strike a dynamic pose than others, but this is very reminiscent of a ring-tailed lemur and probably one of the best models of one I've seen in recent times. Of course, going back to Madagascar, the TV series, if you know King Julian, you know he's scared of this, which is the fossa. This is a predator of lemurs and other animals within Madagascar, and is carnivorous. You can probably tell it by its body form. It looks kind of like a cat or a dog, but is in fact neither. And they have this dark coat because they are mostly nocturnal, although they will be out and about in the daytime as well when the opportunity arises to hunt lemurs and other species that take their fancy. Of course, as they get older and more experienced, they can take larger prey or perhaps more risky items. But of course, they got to start somewhere, just like we do, and learn as they go along. Looking at the paws here as well, this is an extremely good model, and despite the fact I'm not exactly the fossa's biggest fan, this is going to be a great addition to my growing collection of non-reptile and amphibian models. Here is probably one of the most striking tortoise species that you can find around the world, and hopefully you can recognize this as the radiated tortoise. These guys are closely related to plowshare tortoises, which is another species found in Madagascar. And as you can probably tell, because of this striking pattern and quite distinctive pattern as well, they are, they were traded heavily for the pet trade, despite the fact it being, criminalized. There has been a whole host of illegal movement of animals because they can command a high price. More so in the plowshares than the radiated tortoises. Well, there are, a number of places where you can buy captive bred animals, and they get quite larger, a lot larger than this. This fits in the palm of my hand, but the actual animal, is going to be far, it will fill up the entire frame and when it sits on this table. But looking at this guy, it's great to see the detail in all of the scales. I'm not sure they're coming across on camera, but tortoises have growth lines, and hopefully you can see those. All of these little, these V-shaped coloration bits between the black and the yellow, and the detail on the legs around the tail area, like we saw with the sea turtles. So it's great to see that Toymany is taking the time and the energy to try to capture the essence of these animals in an extremely fine detail way. Although no doubt that probably takes a bit of time and energy, it's worth it in the end, because if you were to ask me exactly what this was, I could tell you just by seeing a very small section of it. Depending on where this was posed, I may not be able to tell you that it was a toy if the scale was right or if there was no reference. We're down to the final few. So next we're going to move on to this guy, which is a black and white rough lemur. Some of you may have seen these in zoos as well. They're less common than they used to be, and the same with their closely related cousins, the red rough lemurs. I'm not entirely sure why. Perhaps they're hard to breed in captivity. Somebody please let me know in the comments below. Anyways, just like with the other lemurs that we've seen, or we're going to see, this model captures the essence, almost dropped it, of the black and white red rough lemur. Again, a nice dynamic pose with a towel curled up here in a defensive posture. It's in the process of cooling to its conspecifics. This fine detail on the hands here, and if you've never seen the lemur foot, this is exactly what they look like, with this large opposable thumb to help them grab branches and tree trunks, etc. But I am again impressed with the detail that has come through with this model, given the fact that these only cost a handful of pounds each, or you can get the whole set, obviously, for a discounted rate. Beautiful. Now we're going to move on to something which hopefully you'll be able to tell me what it is before I say, but this is the bamboo lemur. The reason why I said that is because he's holding a bit of bamboo. So I'm not too familiar with these, but having researched them briefly for this video, this looks exactly like a number of the poses that they pull whilst they're doing their bamboo lemur thing, the tail outstretched, holding some food, looking scared into the camera. I'm not entirely sure if that's their whole persona, but popping down, you can see that it stands out pretty well. Sorry, it's a bit out of focus there. Then we're going to move on to probably one of my favourite species of lemurs, and this is a sifaka. If you've ever seen the 2000 Disney film Dinosaur, then you may be familiar with these sorts of lemurs. That's probably where I was first introduced to them. I've never seen them in a zoo, unfortunately, but there's wildlife documentaries there for a reason. These guys live in the more arid parts of Madagascar, where you have a whole host of quite thorny trees that have, rapid defenses, I'll say, to protect their young shoots. However, these guys have adapted to those quite hostile conditions, and instead of climbing trees, because there aren't any, or there aren't many, I should say, that don't have 6-inch spikes on them, they sort of run and leap across the ground in a sort of sideways motion, which this model captures in the process. They're also quite vocal, and I am, impressed that Toymany were able to pull this one off. It's got quite a heavy base, I imagine, because the model itself will be quite unstable without it. And it's quite unusual to see that. I think this is the first Toymany toy that I've reviewed that has a large base like this. But again, if lemurs are your thing, then you can tell that this is a very good model and one that deserves our appreciation as well as our congratulations, because if I tried to do this, it would be nowhere near this good. Okay, down to the final two. Who are we going for first? I'm going to go with this guy so we can save the best for last. So hopefully by now you've been able to tell that most of the animals that we're looking at are lemurs, and so this guy here is in fact a mouse lemur. And from the research I've been able to do, this appears to be Madame Berth's mouse lemur, and the reason they get their name is because they're a lemur, but they look like a mouse. I know, again, inventive, just like with the tomato frog. Looking at the different features of this mouse lemur, the research I was able to do, this captures their coloration, their posture, their dynamic pose very well, especially with the ears facing forward like this, and the tail outstretched and kind of got a bit of a kink in it. That's how they tend to hold their tail. They're not out straight all the time or held up. That is an extremely well-made model, and looked exactly like the images and videos I was able to find of these guys whilst researching this video. And finally, we move on to the final chameleon in this set and the final model in this set. How many times can I say final in one sentence? So, for those who aren't aware, this is Parsons' chameleon, which is the world's largest species of chameleon, and we can see that its tongue, which seems a little bit delicate, to try and catch an insect, or maybe it's just sticking its tongue out at us, I'm not sure. If you remember in the previous video, I said that chameleons were one of my favourite groups of lizards, and models of them are hard to come by because there aren't many of them. It's great to see that in this set alone, Toymany have introduced 2 new chameleon models, and I can't wait to add them with my other chameleons that I've already got from other manufacturers. Thinking about this model though, the coloration is perfect. The tail here, I'm not entirely sure what is going on. Maybe this was in a reference image that was used, but typically chameleons won't pose their tails in this way unless they're on the ground. So maybe that's what's happening here, is this guy was on the ground. Unfortunately, there's not a fly or anything at the end of its tongue here. That would have been a great little addition. But it is a great way to demonstrate that chameleons have projectile tongues. Most people know that, but maybe some people don't, especially if this is more focused towards the lemur-loving members of the toy community. But overall, this is a model that I'm quite impressed with. There are a few ways that this could be improved. However, again, given the fact that these only cost $3 or $4 each, you can't really complain, can you? So that is the Toymany Madagascar playset. And if you want to order any of these animals individually or the set itself, there will be links in the description. And also, please remember to use my discount code in order to get yourself 10% off. Finally, let me thank Toymany for sending me these to review, and to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.